That's great. So there was a comment in our previous video about what medical school is like. So today I'm joined with Patrick to help answer that question.
Alright, but before we start, a very important topic. What do you say to your family at Christmas when they ask you, how's med school going and what sort of doctor do you want to be?
One of the most common questions, what specialty? What do you want to specialize in?
I have answered like a smartass in the past and just said, oh, I want to be a good doctor. That's usually not good enough. Usually you get a follow-up question, no, well, like what kind of, like, do you want to be a cardiologist or an orthopedic surgeon, or what do you want to be? And many of you will understand the groan where you say, oh, I haven't yet decided, and they're like, oh, okay. It makes you seem a little bit like you don't know what you're doing, but we do know what we're doing. It's the most normal thing to say, that we're still figuring out what specialty.
Exactly, and we're only preclinical students, we haven't hit the wards yet, so there's plenty of time to experience many specialties before we decide on the exact one we want. So I'm going with the go-to. I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, I say very much the same thing. I am curious by anything that I have the opportunity to see in my time, and I'll make a decision later.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sounds like a very solid answer.
Yeah.
So today we are going to discuss what medical school is like and our experiences, even though we had quite a bit of time in Zoom University, which means we had a slightly different experience to other years. So we'd like to paint a picture for you about what medical school is like. I did biomed last year, and Patrick, you did health sci. We'd like to compare the differences and how it's structured. So how is med school structured?
Yeah, well, in our second year we have lots of pieces. There's all the modules which concern the body systems. So I joke with family, I said this year we did everything below the neck. We had like the digestive system, musculoskeletal, anything just below here. And then on top of that, there's the professional and communication skills as well, which works sort of, it chugs along throughout the whole year. And then we have some other two special topics as well, like principles of medicine, like infections and cancer and stuff which concerns the whole body. And the other special topic was pharmacology as well. So there's those elements, and then there are other pillars to the curriculum as well, like Haora Māori, where we have a intensive week, and there are other assignments throughout the year as well. But as I say, there's a lot of different pieces, so it's not possible to hold all those pieces at once.
Yeah.
You gotta stay with the schedule and work with the university on that one.
So I think for me the main difference between first year and medical school is that in first year it's very much structured like a university still. You have 4 papers first sem, 4 papers second sem. But in med school it's kind of its own thing. And modules, which I guess are the things we learn the most, it's how most of our learning is centered around. It goes by module. So you do the digestive system all in one block, and then you have a test at the end, and then immediately after you do another block, and then you focus completely on that. So I think for me that was a big change and something I had to adapt to.
Yeah. And those modules don't sync up with other programs at the university as well. So we'll get busy at different points in the year, and we'll be less busy at different points in the year compared to that more structured like paper that you'd probably be more familiar with. An average week is tough to tie down, I have to say. There's no normal for this year, but we have had lectures, we've had labs, we've had Zoom University experience, so every week is different. At the end of the week, in the weekends, you usually get a bit of time to chill out, reflect, maybe have a look at some assignments, which, to be fair, they've been pretty chill, the assignments we've had. And maybe catch up on a spot of study. Throughout the week, really setting some time aside to follow up with the lectures, make sure that you are understanding the lecture objectives that are sailing past at 1,000,000 hertz a minute. So that's, I guess, that's been my experience of an average week.
And since lecture recordings are a thing now, Did you go to attend lectures more, or did you watch online lectures, and how did that differ in terms of time?
I had to set myself a rule. I had to say I'm going to go to every lecture I possibly can. I had to sit down, I had to do the thing, because if I didn't make that rule, it made things more difficult later on. The mahi needs to be done at some point, so
It had to be done.
yeah.
Okay. Would you say then that if you attend lectures, you would have more time on your hands, or if you didn't attend lectures?
You definitely have more time on your hands when you watch the recordings. It's just a logistics thing. So when we went into Zoom, I picked up more hours at work because I could physically go into work, leave the lecture recordings till later, catch up later. But that switches up your priorities a wee bit throughout that week. Sometimes you might have a lighter week where you're like, oh, I kind of neglected renal physiology. Oh my gosh, I've got a lot to catch up on. And so the following week, you got to change the dials a wee bit.
Apart from going to lectures and all the material that needs to be done, how much free time would you say you have? Is there a decent amount to do co-curriculars and to work?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say the co-curriculars are so important. The UMSA events, the clubs you can get involved with, the clubs that you could start, all the interest groups. There's so much to soak up at University of Auckland, and if you're on campus and you're engaging with that, you're getting so much more than just the lectures, I think. And when you get home after the end of the day, you think, oh, it was those connections that I made. It was those people that I met, and it was those interesting ideas that I really connected with that you take home with you. And you still have to do a lot of the memorization. Even though we had some online tests, there were still some things that you got to sit down, you just got to plug them in. You got to have that plug-in time as well. But once that's done, I reckon getting involved in as much extracurricular and clubs and signing up for UMSA and signing up for Grassroots, which is free, and signing up for as many activities as you can on campus is the way to go.
I think so. I think having these variety of experiences helps you become a more well-rounded person, and hopefully then a better doctor.
Absolutely.
So what co-curriculars did you do in your second year of med school?
Wow. So I worked a lot for UMSA. I dedicated a lot of my time with helping with advocacy issues which came up throughout the year. We have had a very tumultuous year, so making sure everyone had their voices heard as appropriately as possible was on my plate, and setting up events and making a colouring in session happen and trying to connect with people and just doing my bit for the service of our cohort.
Yeah, we really appreciate all the work you did for our second years as class rep. I know we really appreciate it, so thank you so much, Petra.
Thank you.
Apart from being class rep and doing all these things for our cohort, did you have time to work on top of that?
Yes, yeah. And for the virtual learning, more time to work. And I did. I picked up more hours, and I think that that's okay. If you can work and if you can make connections in a health-related field, that's really important too, because you get to see doctors working, you get to see nurses working, you get to see all elements of how the health industry works. So I know lots of students in our year who work reception, who work maybe as an orderly or will work in some admin role, so you can get close. You can get close to the action, you see how it really works, and that helps the odd moment you line up the theory from our preclinical years with how it works in the real world, and it just makes it all fit together, and it makes it really feel quite purposeful.
So you get to see a bit of how our learning translates to the working world, which is very a great experience for you.
Absolutely.
Sweet. How about downtime during medical school? Do you have time to go on social media? Do you do that often?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I downloaded TikTok this year like many others, and spent way too long scrolling, but also engaging with friends and just keeping up some really valuable connections. Mid school this year has been a platter. It's been quite open. You can pick out as much as you want. You can fill up on as much content as you want. Or you could just like pick at the little pieces and do as much just so you're not hungry. Just so that you can actually consume what you need so you can survive at mid school. Yeah. I mean, that's the baseline. Once you've covered that off, really you can pick at that platter however you like, I think.
Yeah, there's always a lot of content in medical school, and if you want you can do the textbook readings and all that, but there's always more content to learn for sure. On Grafton campus now we have the library available to us. Did you make good use of that?
Yeah, I love going to the library. I'm not gonna lie, it's a distraction in many ways. There's lots of people around and you might encounter the odd person which makes you feel like you haven't studied enough, and it makes you feel like, oh, I'm guilty for not covering that content, or oh, I don't really want to watch that lecture because then they'll know that I haven't watched the second lecture. And that's just part of going to the library. There's people around.
Yeah.
But the energy as well of being around lots of people and being able to call on a friend or call on somebody when you're there, or just happen to bump into somebody that happens to be struggling with the same topic that you're also struggling with, is a really nice coincidence and a really nice thing to bump into, because you never know when somebody else is going to help you out, and you never know when you might be able to help out somebody else as well. So at least when you're on campus, you're there, you're present, you're turning up, you really open yourself up to that opportunity.
So I think that summarizes what medical school is like for us as second years. I hope that you've got some insight into what medical school is like. Any last pieces of advice, Patrick?
Make sure you sign up for UMSA.
UMSA. Alright. Thanks so much for being on here again, Patrick. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thanks, juniors.
You're welcome, Patrick. So, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Had to do an UMSA plug.
That's it.